Broadcasting live, this is the Handicappers Report, brought to you by the Clubhouse Racebook, 711 Central Avenue, Albany, and CapitalOTBBet.com, the premier online wagering site in New York State. CapitalOTBBet.com. Sign up today.
Good morning and welcome to the Handicappers Report live from Gulfstream Park. We're right here on the paddock set on Florida Derby Day. Looking forward to it. Looking forward to the next better part of an hour or so, because look who's in the house. Steve Bick, live on the road. It's kind of a loose on the lead on the road version. Good morning.
Good morning. It is fabulous to be with you someplace other than the backstretch at Saratoga or in some closet in Schenectady. Or in the kitchen at the big OTB.
I said on the radio the other day, we miss you at the old Schenectady studio because you brought the pastries in every Saturday.
Bella Napoli.
Yeah, very good. So we missed those.
It's great to be down here. I've been down for a week.
You were down all week, and with last week you were up in Ocala, and the sale went well.
Sale was very strong, and there'll be another big hit coming up next week, or week after they start the Breeze Show for 6 days, and another 4 days of horse sale at Ocala as the 2-year-olds start to get distributed around the country. It's hard to believe. Keeneland opens on Friday, and 2-year-olds are going to start to run.
Yeah. And Wesley Ward will have a couple of check marks in the win column.
No doubt.
Automatically.
No doubt.
We were talking before we went on the air. Also want to remind people there's another last Derby future pool. So, wait until the end of the day today and maybe jump in a little bit.
Tomorrow, too. In fact, it closes at 6:30, I think, tomorrow. And what's notable is the horses that'll be running next week at the Wood, at the Santa Anita Derby, and at Bluegrass. Those you're going to know about the ones that are on the list that run today, whether it's at Arkansas or here. But the ones that are out of sight, out of mind, those are the ones that are going to provide value. So sometimes when we get this close with the last Derby future pool, it's not that great, I think, because it's such a murky picture.
Yeah.
And with these Japanese horses to deal with and so much going on, it feels like you might find yourself a 60, 70 to 1 shot on Sunday night.
Also, with the extended number of entries they have now, that's
39.
That's helping out too.
Yep.
All right, you ready to jump in today?
You bet.
A little bit later on, $1 million guaranteed in the late pick 5, $750,000 in the late pick 4. A lot of fun. I'll also remind people that there's a mandatory pay in the Rainbow tomorrow, so keep that in mind as well. All right.
There's also, it's closing night at Turfway, and they've got a pick 5 carryover, crazy in the late pick 5. So it should be a great way to close out the whole big Saturday in addition. And they're forcing out, of course, all their other pools, but there's a $25,000 pick 6 carryover at Aqueduct today.
Oh, well, so all over
crazy.
There are some opportunities, but a great card here at Gulfstream with the Florida Derby, obviously the highlight of the meet, the highlight of today's card, and a really great undercard of stakes races as well. But the non-stakes races are very good, including a couple of maiden races. One of them in race number 1, maiden specials, scheduled to go a mile on the turf, and both of these maiden races that I alluded to, I think, have horses that could come out and be worth watching. What do you see in race number 1?
This is funny because during the week, it just so happened we had some guests that were heavily involved in this, including Dale Romans and Todd Pletcher. And Pletcher has, I think, 4 maidens that were going to be running Thursday, Friday, Saturday when we talked to him on Monday. And I make a habit of pressing trainers, who's live. And we got to Spansive, this Rapoli Caracantai, and Todd and I, there's no reason why he would say what he said. He said, this is a filly that of the maidens we're sending out, this one has got every right, based on the way she was coming up to it, to run well and win first out. But this is a crazy race.
Yeah.
You've got all kinds of pedigree involved here. How about Shug sending out the Hinkle homebred Ogima Bay at a big price too, 20 to 1. This is a half to Visadero and to Gunnison, those nice horses that Buff Bradley trained for Hinkle. So Ogima Bay, this is a mile on the grass, has every right to run well. Then you've got Gloria's Princess, Brendan Walsh for the late Harvey Clark. This is a half to Harvey's Little Goyle. That's just a couple of the pedigrees. The ones that have run are just okay, like Clement's Barry Schwartz runner, I'm a Sure Thing. Proctor moves Millennium Park to the grass and stretches out. And feels like a horse, a Curlin out of the Warfront mare that belongs on the grass. Millennium Park, 12-1. So this is a tough group. I ended up picking at 5-2, 4-7 with Spansive on top. I used Motown Mayhem from Cassie as well, who's working nicely. And I think if you're going to start the pick five, to start the day, I think you got to spread around a little.
Yeah, I don't disagree. Although I went with your 5 as well. I put Spansive on top. I really like Caraconte as a sire of win early types. Last year, 16 first-time starters for the sire, 4 wins, 3 seconds, and a third. 3 of those 4 wins were on the turf. 1 of the 3 seconds was on the turf. Caraconte attracts my attention, and this one for Pletcher and Rapoli is intriguing to me. Second spot, I went out to number 8. I'm a Sure Thing. Of those that have some experience, that one intrigued me a little bit. And then I did use Motown Mayhem, who is Mark Cassie also trains for Mrs. Weber, and this one's a sibling to her, Super Hoity Toity,
who runs later on the card.
Yeah, later on the card, runs in race 10, but had won 4 of the first 6 starts of the career. So I thought Motown Mayhem was interesting as well. In the opener, I have it 5, 8, 4, and 9.
Second race is a maiden optional claimer. This one is kind of a sore thumb on this card. Gives you a Tapeta race, and they're going to go 5.5. So it's a scramble. There's horses that have had lots of chances. Then there's some firsters that might have a right to run well.
Yeah, and what I looked at Arms being a first-time starter by Gun Runner, but goes out for a 40 tag, and the siblings weren't so much. So I shied away. I wouldn't argue anybody off of it, but I went 9, 6, 2, and 12. I put Gotta Like Him on top, goes made special weight to maiden claiming, has some early speed, so I thought this horse could be a little bit interesting with that speed. I went with Jerry's Turn, and these are the kind of horses I'm not thrilled with. 26 tries and hasn't gotten it done, but I think might fit okay with this bunch and Sterling Harmony off the last race. A near miss, came back from a long layoff, tried this sprint on the Tapeta, a little shorter, but I think that result bodes well for this afternoon in the second start back from the layoff. In the second, I have it 9, 6, 2, and 12.
I went 9, 12, 2, and 6.
All right.
So we're
in
harmony here. And you've got a number of horses, as you mentioned, that have had their chances. Sterling Harmony, the Stephen Dwoskin inside second off the long, almost 9-month layoff. That Jerry's Turn to me is not a win candidate. Awesome Crusader is a funny horse for Ralph Nix that has run basically the same race over and over and over again and just will not win. He's got 9 seconds. He's made $91,000. So from the ownership standpoint, Jacks are better up in Ocala. They can't complain too much, but this is, again, a horse that doesn't win. I think you lean heavily in here on Gotta Like Him, the Jose D'Angelo that is going to cut back to the 5.5 distance from a couple of route races, 2 turning. He's had the clear lead. I think he might just get out in front, forget to stop.
Yeah, and he's been going longer, but it still looks like legit speed.
Yeah, he's got real speed.
Third race kicks off the stakes action on this Saturday Florida Derby Day card. The Cutler Bay, $100,000. They're on the grass at 7.5, and of course down here that's going to be a couple turns.
It is, and this was there's 2 races in this vein, the 7.5 turf races for 3-year-olds. This for the boys, and the fillies come later. The filly race is really interesting. I didn't have anything, honestly, I didn't have anything clever. Dunedin from Kelsey Danner, who's had a very good meet down here. Won, I think, maybe 3 stakes. She's really done a terrific job. And I've talked to her twice already this year. Dunedin off the layoff, and she's okay bringing horses back. But if this one picks up where it left off last year. Dunedin, the horse to beat, and a square enough number at 5-1. Moved to that King's Fortune from Todd, who won at first asking on the Tapeta, and now moves over to the grass. Harry Time from Safi Joseph, I thought had to be at least seriously considered. And then you got a mystery horse. Jack Sisterson shows up with an import, a Sioux Nation colt, behind enemy lines. There's a couple of horses on this card like this. Later on, we're going to talk about Joyce for Graham Motion. Same kind of a horse showing up first time North America. So 6-8-3-4 for me.
And I just have your top two flip-flopped. I put King's Fortune on top, lived up to the Boltioro sire. That's a win early sire and got it done in the debut. It was on the synthetic, so we'll see this afternoon. Number 6 underneath, and then yours. That you're right. The interesting horse is the 4 horse, because I never know what class-wise to make of the horses coming over from European synthetic. Usually you give the Europeans on the grass a little bit of a boost, but this one most recently a January start on the synthetic in Ireland. But I do think what we've seen so far showed a little bit of promise, and that they elect to come over here and make the U.S. debut in the stakes race was interesting. So for me, 8, 6, 3, and 4.
Well, the 3 we should talk about for 1 second, because Michael Ivarone has a couple of horses on the card. He's got O'Connor back again, like he did on Pegasus Day. And one of the real features of these big days now at Gulfstream is seeing what Michael and Jules Ivarone are going to wear. I think I've set the bar fairly high this morning, Seth, as have you with that snappy tie.
And
it's a sack of ties.
Yeah,
it's a sack of ties tie.
I pulled it out and I said I'm going to hear about it because Paisley, I made it too obvious that it's not one of my own ties.
It's funny, but yet you love the Paisley ties that I send your way.
I do like the Paisley, and so I should maybe I'll pull one out. Maybe I'll go buy one, and then
we got some time between the time you get off the air and first post 11:30. We could go over to Aventura Mall, and I could set you up and bring you back in here, maybe with one of those orchid. Orchid is the color of Florida Derby, and so maybe a little orchid for you with your coloration. I think
that would work.
That's in your color wheel.
We shall see. I think.
Do you have a color wheel?
No. All right.
You knew there had to be a little zest for
I knew when I pulled the tie out. All right. You got to set me up here.
Oh, I set you up?
Yeah.
All right, here we go. You set me up wearing the tie. 4th race, 1 turn a mile, of course, and the first level allowance in here. These are 4 and ups, and a couple of familiar horses that are kind of coming back as handicap types.
Yeah, I went 9, 4, 7, and 1. Bright Future from Pletcher Rapoli and Company hasn't been seen since June of last year. That's going to be the big question mark. Workouts aren't really saying a whole lot, but this horse showed a little bit of promise in the first couple of starts of the career. So I'll put that one on top in here, not with a whole lot of confidence. Dr. Bluth, New York bred, that has some nice positional early speed, I think can be a little bit interesting in here as well for Safi Joseph. And then I used O Captain. A nice resume of stakes races underneath. The last coming off a long layoff, and it was the Gulfstream Park mile, well beaten in there, but I would expect getting back to the more proper non-winners of one other than could be a little bit interesting in here in the second start back. So for me, not with a lot of confidence in this race, I went 9, 4, 7, and 1.
Well, I mentioned, horses coming back at 4, and, with the retirements of horses like Cyberknife and the like, there's horses in this race that we kind of look to maybe take a next step and be a better older horse even than they were at 3. Giant Game from the rail for Dale Romans, Dennis Albaugh, and West Point. This is a horse that Dale always liked, and it feels like he came back after the long layoff, hadn't been seen since the Tampa Bay Derby last year, comes back and has run 2 very promising races. Hasn't won, and hasn't won since he broke his maiden back at Keeneland last fall. But this is a horse that, or as a 2-year-old in the fall, this is a horse that Dale Romans always touted as a talent, and he thinks that he will emerge. You know, you mentioned Bright Future. I always get a kick out of horses like this that are named based on something that they told the owners at the farm. You don't name a horse Bright Future if they haven't reported from the farm that, you know, that Curlin colt is okay. He's going to be good. We're going to have some fun. So they name him Bright Future. You know, as opposed to Slim Slow Slider, for instance, for Peter Walder. No, Bright Future, third career start. Obviously, this is an ouchie horse that, you know, has had interruptions, but working nicely at Palm Beach Downs for this return. Dr. Blue makes some sense as well. I went 1-4-9-6.
All right. Get back to stakes action in race number 5, the Pan American Grade 2 event. They're scheduled to go a marathonish 1.5 miles on the grass.
You know, this is, as usual, this is a Mike Maker Invitational. And what you do is you stack up the Mike Makers and you take the one that on first pass you think that one can't win. That's the one you take. No, I'm kidding about that a little bit. However, Bay Street Money kind of intrigued me. I mean, the horse to beat is Masterpiece, obviously, the 7-year-old master craftsman coming off the good try in the McDermott. This is a horse that, you know, just kind of fits the bill. But honestly, at 7-5, you can have him. I mean, as you know, the key horse or the on top type. So I went out to Bay Street Money, who is coming off that try at Fairgrounds, which I won't hold against him, ran kind of evenly. And of course, at that time at New Orleans, you had the weird configuration with the rail. I thought Bay Street Money is competitive enough, if you go back to last fall, that with just one more forward move at 9-2, that he was a horse that you wanted to play with. After that, I'll make a point about Rise the Guy. He's been gone. He had been gone since October of 21, when he ran last in the Sycamore for Ian Wilkes. Comes back in a allowance race at the beginning of March, and it more or less just knocks the rust off. I would not, at 20-1 or more even, I would not be shy about using Rise the Guy underneath. So I ended up in here 8-3-4-7.
I didn't know what to do with Rise the Guy, but looking at that last workout, I thought you might be exactly right. They just got a race in, and now they're going to pop. But I went 1-5-3-8. I put Wicked Fast on top for the aforementioned Mike Maker. I thought, you know, the numbers he's kind of throwing over the last few starts here at Gulfstream maybe would bode well for this afternoon. Therapist, the New York bred Irad Ortiz on board, who just has been phenomenal at this meet. Obviously comes off the win in Allowance Company, first off the claim, and now they move into the Stakes Company, second off the claim. You know, been in Stakes before, but for the new barn, moving back into Stakes Company, and then Masterpiece in the third spot. So for me, I had it 1-5-3-8.
Sixth race is the second division of that opener, the 1 mile turf race for the 3-year-old fillies. And there's actually a lot of overlap in terms of connections and the likes. What'd you do in here?
I went 8, 10, 1, and 11. I'm going to take a pop in here with Meow Meow Hiss. Creative Cause last year, 69 first-time starters, 6 winners, 4 seconds, 8 thirds. Long, steady string of workouts. I just thought this horse could be a little bit interesting with a little bit of breeding. There was a sibling called Cornbread Hill that won its career debut. So a little bit of win early with the sire, a little bit of win early underneath. I will say Cornbread Hill won the debut on the dirt. But again, it was win early. So see if Jimmy Jerkins can get a first-time starter through at a price. And you have to demand a price given the scenario and who else is in here. Get Your Kicks, paid $300,000 for this one. It's Chad Brown, second-time starter. You know, the debut wasn't anything to write home about, but it was a mile on the dirt. Now they move over to the turf, and I thought that horse could be interesting as well. Mirabella for Todd Pletcher. Debuted on the dirt last July at Monmouth. Hasn't been seen since. This is the kind that I think get the time off and come back, and maybe they're improved. And with Into Mischief on top, this should be a win early type as well. I went 8, 10, 1, and 11.
I overlap a little bit. 1, 5, 10, 12 in here. Mirabella comes back for a 3-year-old debut for Pletcher and Bob and Lawana Lowe. Tiger Tap from Dixiana, homebred Tappet filly out of a Tiger Ride mare, gets back on the grass and feels meant for it. You mentioned Chad and Get Your Kicks. Absolutely got to respect this one. And in fact, it's interesting because Chad's got the horse for First Row Partners and Team Hanley in the opener. And of course, First Row Partners, Steve Lehman, one of Chad's long-term owners, and the First Row Partners represented by the box in the first row at Saratoga, just a little before the wire. And I didn't use prerequisite, but she wouldn't surprise there. Get Your Kicks for Peter Bradley, of course, a kind of a pinhook-ish operation. Sometimes if they don't sell to Peter's liking as 2-year-olds, he'll keep them and campaign them. Sometimes he'll give them a start and then sell them. Feels like maybe they want to go on with this one. Quality Road out of the Escondarea mare. And Brian Lynch took over Holy Foley. It's going to have to work out the trip from the wide post from the 12. But this point of entry intrigues me, and made a move to Brian from Steve Asmussen and came back for the 3-year-old start pretty darn well, and I think is going to get a little bit overlooked in here. 3-1 morning line. I think people will shy away somewhat because of the being outposted.
Yeah, the 12.
But Holy Foley, I thought was okay in here.
The Archangel, a little bit of breeding there as well. For
the that's the Harvey Clark, the late Harvey Clark. Second Harvey Clark horse on the card in the 2 maiden races. That's why I said there was lots of overlap.
Yeah. 7th race, the Ghost Zapper, 8.5 furlongs in this Grade 3 event for the handicap division.
Oh, this is sort of like the Grade 4 Pegasus, what you got here, because Simplification, who was my Derby pick and who just has not taken the next step, or when he has taken the next step, he's run into buzzsaws like Skippy Longstocking. And the last 2 of the last 3, the Pegasus, he really disappointed, and he had been coming in well. I'm going to go back to Simplification. I went, I think, 3-5-4. 3-5-4-1 in here. I mentioned the Ivarones. They've got O'Connor from Safi Joseph also coming out of the Pegasus. First Captain is working his way back, of course, for West Point, and they're excited. Had Jason Blewett at the beginning of the week. First Captain comes back as a 5-year-old, and he needs to pick it up a little bit if he's going to earn his way to into a stud. I mean, by all rights, he's a horse that should become a stallion, but he needs to take the next logical step. Surely Furious is a horse that I got familiar with at Presque Isle last year with Glenn Wismer, the veteran horseman, won the Presque Isle Mile and was hopeful of getting into the Breeders' Cup Dirt Mile with him. They've done a bunch of different things, including sprinting on the dirt, then sprinting on the turf. I mean, this horse has done a little of everything on every surface, and he's a little sneaky in here. And if you're looking for a price to include beyond the obvious, it's definitely Shirley Furious, who gets Jose Ortiz and the inside ground saving trip.
I'm using Simplification on top as well, not with a lot of confidence. 3, 6, 5, and 4 for me, but I just thought Simplification has shown some nice races down here at Gulfstream. We'll hope he pops to one of his better efforts. I use Clapton in the 2nd spot. There are some races on the page that are good enough. Again, overall at Gulfstream, he does well also. And then First Captain, the Pimlico Special winner. I had Tommy Bellhouse on yesterday. Yeah, they're hoping for bigger and better things this year for that one. O'Connor down in the 4th spot. But for me, as I say, I'm not super confident in here. I think it's an interesting field where you could make a few different cases, but I'm 3, 6, 5, and 4, and we're halfway down. So why don't we take a quick break and reset, come back in a couple, and we'll go through the remainder of today's big Florida Derby card right here at Gulfstream Park, live from Gulfstream. Seth, Merrow, Steve Bick, come back after the break. Stay tuned.
from Gulfstream Park with Florida Derby weekend coverage. Tune in both mornings for selections on the Handicappers Report and interviews with some of the major players on racing across America. That's Friday, March 31st and Saturday, April 1st, live from Gulfstream Park, right here on Capital OTB TV. Capital OTB is now streaming live on Roku. The RTN Racing channel on Roku lets you watch OTB TV live through your Roku device or your Amazon Fire Stick, rather than being limited to computers and mobile devices, which means you can now watch OTB live wherever you are. Simply open Roku, scroll to find the RTN channel, then click on OTB TV. OTB TV on Roku. Try it now.
Come on.
I want sales reports on my desk by Monday.
Oops, my bad.
Love racing? RTN brings you every live simulcast on your home television, plus live video streaming and race replays on your PC and mobile devices. To order, visit rtn.tv. RTN, a breed apart.
We're back at Gulfstream Park. It's Florida Derby Day. Steve Bick, Seth Merrow, loose on the Racing Across America Handicappers Report. The eighth race.
Top of the hour, Handicappers are Racing Across America. Going to have Mike Welch sit in, and then we have a bunch of tape pieces. Talked with Shug a little bit, talked with Safi Joseph, talked with Dale. Got a little Dave Grenig as well, Ron Nicoletti. So we have some tape pieces, but Mike Welch going to sit in live. So again, that's coming up top of the hour.
The eighth race, second half of the card, and the Orchid, the grade 3, they're going to go 1.5 miles, and got a couple of imports in here that could make this interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. I have it 6-3, 2, and 5. I didn't know what to do with Atomic Blonde. I talked with Tommy Bellhouse yesterday a little bit about it. You know, you don't see a lot of West Point Euro imports, but I think that one for Christophe Clement is interesting. But Personal Best just comes in off the win in the La Proveyante, and I thought that was a nice effort. I think now coming back and trying this race on the undercard here, Florida Derby Day. Good spot for Personal Best. Irod Ortiz on board. And again, I'll reiterate, just having a great meet. Transient in the second spot comes in off some nice stakes efforts here at Gulfstream to start the year. And I think they bode well. The finishing position went backwards from a second to a third, but the number went forward, the buyer. And so I thought was a good indication of maybe we're moving in the right direction and primed for a good effort. And Miss Yearwood, I looked at the Bullet workout just about a week or so ago, and I thought, of that Bullet workout, maybe this horse is interesting at a little bit of a price. So I'm 6-3, 2, and 5.
Well, and Mike Welch is going to say to you that Miss Yearwood is coming in. I am a little miffed. In fact, I had to put the analysis in before the workout report came out, and I saw Miss Yearwood, who I'd considered, and I thought, she's going to end up running well in here. She does have to stretch out to the 1.5 miles, but she ran okay in the Oaks last year at Aqueduct. So I'm a little fearful of her. However, 5, 6, 8, and 3 in here. This Amazing Grace, there's reports out of Payson that she's the goods. And then you look outside to Atomic Blonde as well. So 2 more of these import types, both the Clement in this particular case. And why not Personal Best comes back, hasn't been seen since the La Preveillante win, as you mentioned. And I included Transient, who has been closing well in this kind of company at the right distance. So you got to think that with Edgar Zayas, who's a bit of a hustling type, might finish and certainly is a horse that you could use underneath for some exotic benefit.
And I didn't see the numbers. I didn't check this morning, but Safi is on his way, I think, to the trainer's title down here. He had a nice little lead, but it was still enough that it was possible a couple of days ago. But all right, 9th race today, the Sir Shackleton, $100,000, 7 furlongs is the distance.
4816 in here for me. Wayburn, you mentioned Jimmy Jerkins earlier. Could be a good day for Jimmy, and certainly would love to see him kind of wrap up the winter down here before heading back to New York with a win with this nice veteran 5-year-old. He is, of course, the defending winner of this race, and I don't see why he doesn't come right back. There's enough pace to set up his late run. I know I used Dean Delivers, who I respect, from Michael Yates. Michael Yates, who of course is going to send Darth Vader later in the Gulfstream Oaks, your Devona Dale winner. Well, he's got 3 horses, each of who have, real chances on the day. Sort of a lower profile outfit. Steel Sunshine, I respect, from Bobby DeBona as well. And I guess Collaborate is my 4th in here, give or take. 4816.
I went 4186. I put Wayburn on top. Yeah, no, it's
done this a few times.
Sir Shackleton winner last year and comes in off that second. You have to think that last race was kind of a confidence builder for White Barrio, the optional claimer. Mission accomplished. White Barrio wins, but Wayburn runs a good second. I like Collaborate in there. I thought that horse was maybe interesting, and then came back and won the subsequent allowance race. So I put Wayburn on top and Collaborate in the 3rd spot, and they bookend Dean Delivers, who has tossed in some nice efforts throughout his career, and I think comes into this in a good spot off the last couple here at Gulfstream, the Hooper and the Gulfstream Mile. Another one of those that might be primed for a good try this afternoon. So again, for me, 4, 1, 8, and 6.
The Sand Springs goes as the 10th. This starts the late pick 5 that'll run to the Florida Derby, and they're going to go 1 mile and a 16th. These are fillies and mares that are older, and it's a very competitive, fun betting race.
I totally agree. I went 9, 8, 6, and 7. Persevere Ansia on top. Cherie DeVoe runner hasn't been seen since a second in the Cardinal last fall at Churchill. There are a couple of races in that Churchill meet, and the Cardinal is one of them that I think horses come out of and you have to pay attention to going forward year in and year out. And the second there behind Dalika attracted my attention. This is the seasonal debut. How much will the horse be cranked up today? Not sure, but we're looking at 5-1 on the morning line. I think off the layoff and given this field, as you kind of alluded to, I think we'll get some decent value here. So I'll put the 9 on top. Princess Theorem in the 2nd spot. Nice win 2 back in an optional claimer, and that gave them the confidence to try the Honey Fox, where the horse ran, I thought, a decent 3rd, and another one that may be primed for another little move forward this afternoon. And if so, we'll be in a very, very good spot. And then market segmentation. It's Chad Brown, it's Klarovich, a horse with only 4 starts so far in the career. The seasonal debut off a September to December layoff. I say seasonal debut, it was New Year's Eve. But it was a nice win here in an optional claimer. They went over to try the stake at Tampa, ran 3rd, but again, 4th start of the career. The turf or the stakes debut in there. I think the horse can build off of that. And so for me, 9, 8, 6, and 7.
I went 6, 1, 4, 9, and I actually surprised myself that I ended up putting market segmentation on top because it feels like a competitive race, and I'm thinking, well, let's key off of a price. And whenever you seem to do that with a Chad Brown horse that makes some sense and is every bit competitive, they end up winning. So I think market segmentation, kind of that lightly raced type, went to Tampa for the Endeavor and very easily could have won that race. Comes back in this spot, and Irad gets back aboard. That only enhances the resume. Love in the air for our friend Will Schwartz. And we're going to see Will later. Looking forward to seeing him mainline racing. And this is a mare that has really blossomed as a older horse, and would happen to be on hand at Parks when she won the Plum Pretty. The Go for Juan did not go well in the slop. That's easily forgivable. And then came back to start the seasonal campaign with the win in the allowance. Love in the Air, it can be basically forwardly placed, save a lot of ground, and maybe get first run on the leaders. I had to use Super Hoity Toity, who you mentioned earlier, for Mrs. Weber. This is a seasonal debut as well for a very nice Uncle Mo that had a terrific season up at Woodbine last year. And, not that turf and synthetic are completely interchangeable, but she makes all the sense in the world.
I looked at her. I was just concerned first time against older horses. So I was a little bit concerned there. Yeah,
not worried.
I looked. I had the horse in and out of the
12 to 1 makes it that much more attractive. You mentioned Cherie with Perseverencia. Absolutely going to come running late under Julian Leperoux. Every horse comes running late under Julian Leperoux. So 6149, and there's other horses we didn't even talk about. I had mentioned Josa. This is the Graham Motion First Time North America, who might be something. Shug brings back Cafe Society, who's a real horse. Princess Theorem. I couldn't find room for Princess Theorem in the top tabs. This is a race to start the pick 5. I think you're going to need to spread unless you completely believe in market segmentation.
And wasn't I was sat in the Horseman's Lounge yesterday, and I was kind of your studio. You should have a studio audience. That was very entertaining. But I was sitting back when Grenig and Welch were in there, and Rick Hammerly was sitting in with you. I think Grenig mentioned Kahiko. Somebody mentioned Kahiko over the last couple of days at a big price, and now I can't think of who it was.
No, well, but I know. Well, Grenig has got a price in the Oaks.
Right. Yeah, because when I pulled him over to do the little tape segment, I had him talk on that because I remembered that one. But somebody over the past couple of days has mentioned that one. I just wanted to toss it in because we're talking a big price. Sanibel Island is race number 11, $100,000 up for grabs. You mentioned it earlier. There's a boys version of this one for the 3-year-old filly, 7.5 on the grass.
I thought this was very obvious. Mrs. Astor inside for Jonathan Thomas and George Strawbridge. Then I went to Breath Away and who else? Oh, Aunt Shirley. It's funny. Aunt Shirley. I moved Aunt Shirley up a little bit. In I think when I wrote my write-up has been up since last night, and I think I picked Aunt Shirley 4th for starters, but then I ended up moving her up. Might have been the benefit of the Clocker report. 1529. I thought this was a formful group. Oh, Love Appeals, the 2 involved too.
I used the 9 on top. I went 9, 5, 1, and 2. I just thought this was a really interesting scenario from Todd Pletcher. Debuted in a different barn, Rudy Brissett, but debuted where a lot of nice 2-year-olds over the past few years have. Ellis Park in the summer and won that debut. Subsequently, they were confident enough from that effort to try the spin away last year. Now, was well beaten in there, off since, moves into the Pletcher barn, but obviously had shown some promise, a 3-year-old filly by Justify. Now they move over, they stretch out a little bit and try the turf. Irad Ortiz on board. I thought the horse was intriguing, so I took a little pop there. Breath Away in the 2nd spot for Dean Reeves and company, and Christophe Clement comes in off a couple of good starts that, again, seemed to show some promise for this one. And then Mrs. Astor in the 3rd position. And Love Appeals I put underneath as well off a pretty good-looking debut that you think the horse can build off of. But, again, I'm going to be intrigued to see what this one can do, trying the turf and stretching out in the 3-year-old debut after having shown a little bit of promise last year. In the 11th, I have it 9, 5, 1, and 2.
Late pick 3, the Gulfstream Oaks. The 3-year-olds for the grade 2. This is a very fun bunch with some trying to snap back. Dorth Vader trying to parlay her Devona Dale into a Kentucky Oaks trip. Pletcher heavily invested, and a couple of other interesting price considerations.
Yeah, and I didn't quite know what to do with Dorth Vader. Off the latest, she may be the one to beat. And people will say, but it was 46. So that price was kind of crazy. I mean, she had a better shot in there. And I'm kind of red boarding because I didn't use her. But when you went back and looked, that price was
Mike Welch. Mike Welch delivered for everybody with Dorth Vader, both in print in the Clocker report and then on the radio with me on Friday, where we had gone through the obvious candidates from earlier in the season. And then he said, Dorth Vader may not be good enough, but she was coming into it absolutely just lighting it up in the mornings. And that was to the benefit of a lot of people.
If you drawn a line through the Gasparilla, I mean, like I say, the 46-1 was a little bit, but I put her down in the 3rd spot eventually, and I went 5, 7, 8, and 6. I'm kind of master of the obvious with Miracle coming over off the 2nd in the Rachel Alexander behind Pretty Mischievous. Has some positional early speed. I thought she was going to be intriguing. Pletcher and Irad Ortiz. Sacred Wish in the 2nd spot. Comes over and moves into the barn of George Weaver off a couple of starts at Oak Lawn, the maiden breaker being a pretty good looking effort. Now, it wasn't one of those restricted maiden specials, restricted to the auction price, but it was a good enough effort that I think she could be intriguing in here. And then Darth Vader in the third spot for me. Atomically, I think is also potentially a little bit interesting, given the big win going a mile and a 16th last October here. So 5, 7, 8, and 6.
2, 5, 8, 6 for me. Infinite Diamond for Patrick B. and Cone and daughter Andy. And this happens to be a Fipke B jersey, and she has been okay. The Devona Dale, if you watch it again, she didn't get off great, didn't get that early position that she kind of needs. And I don't know if she sulked a little bit, but Jose Ortiz could not get her going. Joel Rosario gets aboard here. 6-1, a very attractive number for a horse that I think is going to be in the race flow and may end up being the one to catch in the stretch. Miracle, probably the one that sets the early pace. And you're going to argue with Todd Pletcher down here with this kind of a horse. He just wins too often with them. Darth Vader, of course, she also wants to be in the race flow, but she has the open air outside box and can probably set up and kind of stalk a little bit, maybe stalk third or fourth. And atomically, I thought she disappointed, obviously, as the favorite, but she had not been seen since the Breeders' Cup. Could be that much tighter. Not that you could tell from Todd Pletcher workouts per se, with the typical, Todd 49 and change half miles. But the one thing I know, and in fact, on my sheet, on my write-up, I put Infinite Diamond in capital letters. I think she is the best bet of the day, as the best price, essentially, at 6-1.
Very good. And just before we move on, I will note that I love the name of the one. Flakes by the sire, Frosted. How did somebody else not think of that before this?
Good question.
The 13th is the Appleton, $150,000 mile on the grass. But if you're feeling like Forte is the lock in the feature race, this race may offer you a little bit of opportunity to put together an interesting double.
Well, this is insane. This is the silliest race on the card. Todd Pletcher. So whenever you have down here, when you've got something inscrutable, in Todd you trust. Steady on. Rapoli, Viola, a $275,000 Pioneer of the Nile, coming out of the Canadian turf, where he struck the front and was overwhelmed late by his stablemate, the very good Emmanuel. Steady on does make a lot of sense in here as the favorite, and I normally in a inscrutable group, you want to reach for prices, you can use some prices in the multis and such. But I think, this is one of those cases. You got a logical horse that's going to get the right kind of trip. You get IRAD, what's not to respect and to like. You go to Lucky Curlin, who I had to use. And maybe this horse is completely outclassed, coming off of the claim for Fernando Ebro, with a jock that doesn't win a lot. He doesn't necessarily have to win this race at 30-1. He just has to.
The price is going to hold.
Exactly. It's too big of a field with too many, other more attractive win candidates. But this is a horse that could absolutely juice up your exotics. And then I included on the outside the Streams of Tomorrow for Shug. This is a 6-year-old that basically runs his race. You get Castellano aboard, and finally, I think I added another decent price in here. Oh, Super Dormy from Martin Drexler, and coming also out of the Canadian turf. And Jaramillo should get a good ground-saving trip, but Gray's, Gray's Fable's okay in here. There's all kinds of considerations. Win from within, Fort Washington. There's a million ways to go.
I went 4, 5, 6, and 12. I put Striker on top for Josie Carroll. Seasonal debut over at Tampa I thought was promising. I don't think the horse has to have the lead, but I do think that race was very good, regardless with the number and whatnot. So I'm going to take 8-1 on the morning line. I'm going to take Striker on top. And then I used both of the Shug horses, Fort Washington in the second spot, Dreams of Tomorrow down at the bottom. And going the mile, Dreams of Tomorrow from the 12 is kind of up against it. So I put that one at the bottom. But I think Fort Washington comes in very good form. for him. Does come from out of it. You're always up against it when you do that, but I do think we'll hear from Fort Washington in the stretch and then steady on in the third slot for me. So 4, 5, 6, and 12.
So you're going with Striker over Macho Grande?
Yes.
I don't know if I'll ever be over Macho Grande. You completely missed my Ted Striker airplane gag.
Oh, we were doing why were we doing airplane? There was a whole airplane thing going on up in our little area yesterday.
The Florida Derby. And there may be a lot of horses. That doesn't make it particularly fascinating. You did get the complication, of course, of Forte out wide, but there's been a couple of names invoked this week, like Barbaro and Big Brown. Seth Merrow, Florida Derby, all Forte, or is there something alternate?
With the outside post position, I was looking for an alternative, and I looked, and eventually I just thought he's too good. I'm not going to play around. And so I put Forte on top. But I thought there were some interesting horses to maybe play around with a little bit underneath. I have an 11, 6, 10, and 1. I thought Nautical Star for Safi. I like the angle. If you watch handicapping, the afternoon shows enough, that I like coming back from a layoff or to start the career. A couple of sprints and then third start back, stretching out to 2 turns. That's the case with Nautical Star. At the start of the career, it's an experiment, so we'll see if this horse does get the 2 turns. But I thought, a private purchase, comes over from a couple of promising starts at Oaklawn. These are the same connections for White Abario, the winner last year for Safi. So Nautical Star in the mix. Fort Bragg coming in from the West Coast, originally in the Bob Baffert barn, but those horses moving around now on the Derby trail. But I thought Fort Bragg was playable. And Jungfrau, the one horse, big price from Bill Mott. I don't know. This horse just kind of intrigued me at the price, and that the horse flopped in the Withers, and they're still saying, let's go on and take our shot in the Florida Derby in career start number 5. That could be a little bit interesting for Mott and Judd Mott. So for me, 11, 6, 10, and 1.
Well, Forte is in a position where with any kind of a win, he heads to Kentucky, barring what happens at Arkansas, what happens at Santa Anita next week, and Bluegrass and Wood. The obvious scenario is, excuse me, a resounding win here for him, and goes to Kentucky as your Derby favorite. The Florida Derby, as I posted last night, 24 Derby winners have exited the Florida Derby to win the Roses. This just feels like those kinds of names that we invoked. Barbaro and Big Brown. If he runs back to that Fountain of Youth, he will just overwhelm this field. The horses that are at least interesting to build tickets. Mage happened to be here for his maiden win, which was smashing on the Holy Bull undercard. Was asked to do a lot in the Fountain of Youth, and didn't disgrace himself by any means in his second career start, stretching out and facing stake horses. I think he does proceed forward out of here. You mentioned Fort Bragg, one of the Baffert SF Racing Avenger horses, now with Tim Yachtine. The report from Toby Terrell and the DRF Clocker report is that he's been absolutely terrific getting ready for this spot. I liked him in the San Felipe, and he ran in spots and got some experience. It was his first race off of a layoff. I think Fort Bragg is okay as a horse going forward. And then my fourth was my fourth? Oh, Cyclone Mischief for Dale. And, they tried to tinker around with Cyclone Mischief off of that great allowance win to start the year. And then the Holy Bull, they thought, well, let's get him to rate. We'll teach him. No, don't try to teach speed horses to rate, especially on this racetrack. let him roll. And they did that in the Fountain, and he ran much better again. He's got 15 points coming in. If he can be at least third, he's going to give Dale another starter in the Derby. If you missed Dale with me on Thursday, we actually went through his Derby experience. It was fun. And of course, Dale looking healthy and looking
Looks
much better.
great.
Yeah, it was scary what was going on. So Dale doing good, and it would be great. Derbies are always better if there's a Dale Romans horse in it.
And so that takes us through the card. Again, don't forget there's $1 million late pick 5. There's a $750,000 late pick 4. And I'll remind you again that tomorrow, Sunday, mandatory pay in the Rainbow 6. But a big card, obviously, some nice betting opportunities. And let's just, because also over in Arkansas, it's a big day today. If you have some thoughts in the Arkansas Derby, 1.25 million up for grabs, mile and an eighth. Arkansas Derby for me. I liked Angel of Empire and the Risen Star, scored out for me there. I liked Victory Formation, but given the post positions, I tilted toward, I liked Victory Formation and Angel of Empire coming out of the Smarty Jones. And given the post positions in the Risen Star, I tilted towards Angel of Empire. Given the performance there, I'm going to stick with that one. Red Belt 1, who just is going to be heard from in the stretch again, I'm sure. And then Rocket Ken and Reincarnate. Arkansas Derby for me, 6, 10, 7, and 8.
Well, to me, the storyline in this race was all about Reincarnate from the get-go. If you watched the Rebel, I happened to be there, I then stood next to Tim Yachtine and Jack Wolf as Johnny V explained all the things. And people are saying, oh, the trip. It wasn't really just a question of a trip. It was all kinds of experiences. It was mud in the face. It was horses coming over him. It was trying to go between horses. The horse got into major education in that race, and he's way the horse to beat in this spot, I think. But Angel of Empire, Rocket Can, and Red Route 1, none of them would be a surprise. This is a nice group, and the Arkansas Derby, always an important influence on Kentucky.
And just, we got a minute or two left, and Mike Welch is in the green room, so we'll get him up here for Racing Across America. But last week, impressions, Instant Coffee had to disappoint a little bit for Al Gold and company. And Sibelius, how often do you see Tampa Bay to Dubai? That's
so
crazy.
Well, the best part of that win for Sibelius and for Jerry O'Dwyer, Jerry did the unusual double, the Maidan Sam Houston Race Park stake win double. It'll be a while before anybody does that again. The Instant Coffee it's too bad because the winner was allowed to walk on the front end, and it was absolutely not going to be a scenario where he could close in, needed a little bit of a setup. So I feel bad. Al Gold, though, does have Slip Mahoney in the wood next week. So Al not out of the woods yet. And maybe they'll think about the Lexington. I don't know. Haven't heard. Actually, Al, I got to call Al. He said, call me when you got a chance. And I'll have a chance now between now and the start of the race card. Who else? The Japanese thing, we're going to have to analyze it up and down.
Jeez.
There's going to be, it looks like at least three Japanese runners in the Derby. That Derma Sotogaki and Continue-R won the road to the Derby in Japan. So there's a lot to digest between now and May 6th.
Yeah, been a fun couple of weeks, and we'll continue on to Kentucky Derby, but part of that trail, the Florida Derby this afternoon, and we are live from Gulfstream Park. Our first on the road, our first live on the road.
I'm getting the roll finger from Welsh. Welsh is he's on the muscle.
We're wrapping.
No donut for you. You keep that up this morning.
Oh, you brought?
I did.
Bring them over here.
I'll bring them when you're done. You'll be glaze and jelly all over that lapel.
All right, we'll wrap it up for again on the road edition. Pick and Merrow. It's been fun. Have a good afternoon and
Moose and squirrel.
Travel home safe.
Good luck, everybody.
All right, wrapping it up. Stay tuned. Coming up next, Racing Across America.
You're watching OTB TV, a service of Capital Off Track Betting.